Okay, guys, happy Friday. We are here, and when I say we, I mean me and Janet are here to answer all of your questions. There's quite a few of them. Janet's back from the hairdresser. Her hair looks absolutely beautiful. If you could see it, you would be very envious, especially if you had no hair like I have. But let's get started with questions. By the way, I just want to show you something. I had made this for Janet. This is the new Jimmy shirt. Loyal, sincere, and kind. And I'm going to be wearing it tomorrow during my live. So those shirts, get them on the site. Super cool. It's a really cool logo. It is Jimmy. If you've ever seen Jimmy, this is Jimmy. So
it looks just like
Jimmy. It looks exactly like him, right? It's really beautiful. So, all right, let's get started with the questions. Hit me.
Okay, here we go. Sonny says, I got a metal martingale, which helps a lot compared to the nylon. However, the pup was in between sizes. I ordered small and medium, and the small didn't get over his head. But the medium is still loose when fully cinched. Can fit 2 fingers or so under the collar, even when cinched. Is this okay? Seems to be working, and I'm not sure how much better a proper fitting one would be.
So the martingale, if you, what you get, you've got the one that you have to put over. There's other ones that has a snaps, like I like the ones that have the little buckles on them. You might try for a different one, like one that has a buckle, so that it would be a little bit more adjustable. But since you're using a martingale, you're using it because you don't want it to cinch all the way. I'll tell you the test that I always do with a martingale is have it fitted to where you think it's proper, cinch it all the way closed, and then try to pull it up over the dog's head. If it doesn't come over the dog's head, it's fine. Oftentimes it happens with block-headed dogs like bulldogs or bullies or pit bulls. Their head is bigger, their neck isn't as big. It's a little harder to fit, but I think you should be fine. But try that. The test of the martingale is to cinch it closed where obviously it's not choking your dog, but then try to have it closed all the way and then pull it over the top of the dog's head. And if you can't pull it over, then it's doing its job.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay, this one's for Eve, and Eve might like the Jimmy shirt.
Yeah, why she has a Labrador?
She says, our black lab mix just turned 1.
Wow.
He was a stray rescued at 6 months and is smart but independent. He will figure out training games and get ahead of the command. For example, if we are rewarding drop it with a treat, soon he will be getting the toy and racing to drop it without the command. He is frustrated if that doesn't get him the treat. If we tell him to drop something he doesn't want to drop, he will ignore and get mouthy or nip if we grab his collar. What are we doing wrong? Thanks.
As much as I hate to say this, sometimes too much treat training can get the dog confused because it's really tapping into his predatory drives and he's kind of amping himself up. He's getting super, super excited for the treat and then starts to determine when he's going to get rewarded because you're pattern training your dog. So your dog's getting used to a certain pattern, a certain sequence of things you're doing. Treats are not a bribe, right? I always say that to people, is that treats are not, you give me, especially after we condition the dog, after we lure the dog. In the beginning, it is a bribe. We kind of lure the dog along. But then it becomes a reward. So reward means you decide when to give it to the dog, and you have to also decide that if the dog doesn't listen to you, you're going to make the dog listen to you. You have to be able to reinforce what you're asking for. If you're asking for a sit or a drop it or a bring or a leave it or whatever that is, the command is the command. The dog knows what it is because you've taught it to him. You must reinforce it. So in other words, people go, well, he's not taking the treat and he's running away and he's doing this and he's doing that. Put the dog on a long line, make sure the dog knows the commands. And then this is where it just comes down to the dog will be much happier if you're clear with the dog and give him the information. And I think oftentimes people don't. You're afraid of correcting the dog. You're afraid of being too harsh on the dog. If you're asking for something, the dog doesn't do it, no correction, make the dog do it because it's a clear picture to the dog. That's just how dogs communicate. They really enjoy a clearer picture and knowing what they should do because and they're happy. Looking over here at Dwayne and Goofy, who are 2 very happy dogs. So so just you're going to have to make him do it. Use a long line so the dog doesn't blow you off. And how old's the dog, like a year or something?
1 year.
Yeah, 1 year. So between this 9 to 18-month window, there's your crazy adolescent phase where the dog's going to just, especially in the 18-month window more, he's still a puppy, so you just got to reinforce what you're asking for. And the dog will be happier for it, I promise you.
Still a puppy.
Puppy, yeah, puppy.
Okay, JINGYUN N says, hi, Robert. My dog has just turned 1 year old. Recently, his barking issue has become more serious. Every time he sees a dog when walking on a leash, he will become very reactive, which means barking and lunging at that dog. He's not aggressive and has never been involved in a dog fight when playing with other dogs. But that behavior is really annoying, and I have to be very cautious during the whole time when walking with him. Is there any way I can fix it or at least mitigate the behavior? Thank you.
So you're kind of giving me a clue on where I think the problem might be, because you say you've never had an altercation when he gets to play with all these other dogs, right? Isn't that in there?
Well, when he sees a dog when walking on a leash,
Right,
he
but go
becomes
further.
reactive.
But go further. He's never had an altercation.
No, no, not in a dog fight when playing with other dogs.
So when playing with other
yeah.
dogs. So what I'm wondering, and again, your dog should play with other dogs, but your dog should play with a select few other dogs, but shouldn't just get to play with other dogs. And this is where a lot of times the problem comes in. If you have a dog that's naturally really doggy, now none of our dogs are very doggy because they're all bred and conditioned from a very, very early age on that we are their primary source of entertainment, of affection, of enjoyment, of interaction. Most of the time, people don't do that with their dogs. They make the main interaction with their dogs other dogs. They get to play with the dogs. Then the dog wants to go play with this other dog, and suddenly you're saying, no, we have to go. We're on a walk. Come this way, come this way. Now the dog becomes agitated, like, why am I not allowed to play with that dog? And then that frustration can turn into what you're dealing with now, which is reactivity, because he sees the dog, and now there's a conflict. So a couple things I would do. One is just don't let your dog meet other dogs. If he has a couple of friends he plays with normally, great, that's it. But on your walks, watch my videos. I've got several videos on the site about dealing with reactivity to other dogs. The main thing I always do, start at a distance, strong about turns, strong engagement, strong about turns, strong corrections, calm behavior, but teach the dog you must use a loose leash. And I'd probably use a long line. I'd probably use a long line to give the dog more room, because if you're correcting the dog next to you too much, which is what everybody does, then there's a problem. And I'm going to do more long line work, and I've shown a bunch of it. And I just talked to Brian, so we're going to be able to start selling some really good quality long lines here on the site. That'll help you a lot, because the long line is, I think, really the secret to everything. I do it with all my dogs. I do it with the shelter dogs, and I do it with clients' dogs too, because it gives you that ability to correct clearly, be real clear on the correction. That the dog should be focusing on you, not on the other dogs. That's the big problem.
Okay, CHRISTY and ZEKE. ZEKE gets very anxious in the car. 3-year-old male heeler. Cries the entire time. Poor guy. Took him to the beach, 1.5-hour trip one way, and he cried the whole time there and back. When we get in the car, he appears okay, but he starts crying when the car starts moving. Poor guy. I'm about to move cross-country, spending up to 6 months in an RV. How to stop this behavior? I've tried short trips around town, using treats, comforting him, being stern with him, using Benadryl, CBD. He's very stubborn and dramatic.
So some dogs will just do that. Maya tends to whine in the car. She just does it. And then I will tell you, no amount of force or nurturing will undo it. It's a natural thing in the dog. Either the dog will get over it. I'll tell you what I would probably do is give the dog something like a Kong with all their food. Put all the food in the Kong and freeze it, put it in the crate with the dog, and just have them eating it the whole time, because when they're eating, they can't whine. They're sloshing and slobbering. But I would kind of do that to get the dog's mind off of that idea that you're traveling, something to keep him busy, or give him a marrow bone to chew on or something for the ride, and just hopefully the dog doesn't get car sick. But if he was barking, I would put him on a bark collar. And the bark collar for Maya does kind of ease that whining a little bit. But it's just a genetic nerve issue. Maya has it, and trust me, I've tried everything, and nothing works. So I just know that nothing's going to work, so I don't do anything about it.
Okay, FREDRIK B says, hello, I have a 2-year-old German Shepherd dog. I train search and rescue and competition. We started really well in training. She learned really fast and did great, but now the excitement from her in training takes off and the barking begins. Then she loses focus of what we're doing. I'm thinking of scaling my reward down from Kong to treats, because it's usually after rewarding and we go to continue the training. She looks up and barking. Thanks for your help.
So he's using a Kong for a reward now. So you're using a Kong, which search and rescue does a lot. They use like a ball, so they'll toss it. And this is exactly what I talked with Melvin in Switzerland about today. Sometimes when you get the dog into this drive, you release the dog into drive, and the dog has super excitability in that drive for the toy, like Melvin has with the tug toy. You need to start with calm behavior, right? And I don't know how you're starting your training up, but the first thing I would do is start with very calm. Sit down, wait, throw the toy. Don't let the dog get to the toy. Sit down, wait, throw the toy, get to the toy. Then release the dog to the toy after the dog's been calm. Just like when the dog does the obedience or whatever you're doing with the dog, if you're doing like a find or something, and you immediately give the dog. Now, on a search and rescue, I would say you're going to need to keep a super high level of reward, like the Kong, because you need to keep that dog's interest peaked. And if you have a very weak reward, like a treat, it's not going to work. But for obedience, I would take the toy. I take it down quite a bit, and maybe just use some treats or use less rewards. Using too many rewards, use some praise. Just give the dog a pet. Good boy, good girl, whatever, boy or girl. But a lot of that time, the dog's healing, and you go, yeah, good girl. And then the dog gets wound up, gets the toy, and now it's playing with the toy, because they go from this obedience, calm drive to this excitable, released prey drive, playing drive, and it gets them wound up. And then they have a hard time capping that back down. And you're going to have to work on drive capping for sure with the dog if you want to go further with the dog. And that's easy to do. And Frank Phillips and I had so many great conversations about that, even on the phone, where take something that's not as high a level of a reward from, like if the Kong is the crazy high level of reward, then find another toy. Do your homework, do your research on something that's not as exciting to the dog, and reward the dog with that, and keep that Kong for things like search and rescue, because that's where you should actually really keep one toy that has that crazy level drive to do only search and rescue with, because the dog has a lot of drives. And for the other stuff, you're going to need to just get a lower level of reward toy.
Hard to find the balance between those two,
So hard,
because
yeah.
you have that drivey dog. And
Yeah. But you got to keep the dog under control. You're going to have to learn more drive capping, and we should probably do some more videos on that. I just need to get a dog that has that high of drive, so I can show it to you, because I've kind of done it with Goofy. So.
Okay, Christine says, hi, Robert. My 18-month Border Collie German Shepherd dog mix for 6 months now has become aggressive with strange male dogs around the same size as him. He was well socialized as a puppy and has had no traumatic experiences. He has 1 to 2 dog friends that he plays with once a month. We generally keep him away from strange dogs. When strangers ask if he can play with their dog, we used to say yes, because he was always playful. He is still great with females, puppies, and smaller dogs. Should I try and train through this?
How old is he?
18 months.
That's that adolescent window. This is funny, because whenever people have problems, it's right in that window. This is when, and even Dwayne was a little bit, he got a little full of himself during that time. And Janet kind of stayed the course, and he's just, honestly, a spectacular dog. I have seen, it's one of the most common times I'm called for problems. One of the most common times people have problems, because this is your teenager, where you say, be home at 10, and they go, no, I'm staying out till midnight. And it's this challenge. So male dog, I don't know if he's intact. Does it mention if he's intact or not? It doesn't say. More than likely, if he's intact, it's because he's really sowing his oats. If he's not intact, then I wonder when you neutered him. But I would not work through it. In fact, I would teach the dog not to be doggy. I would teach the dog that, again, Goofy is very, very, very dominant when he meets other dogs, right? Immediately sniffs, crotch sniffing. But I don't let him meet other dogs. If I have Goofy with me, 10 dogs walk by, I tell him lie down, he's going to lie down, and he's not going anywhere. You will serve yourself better to get the dog to be dog neutral, because that'll last the dog's life, than to teach the dog to be dog friendly, and that's going to go wrong for you at some point. So if you love your dog, which sounds like you do, you're here, you're training the dog, be your dog's number one focus. Be your dog's advocate, be your dog's best friend, be your dog's companion. And if he's got a couple of friends, what more does he need? Our dogs have our family as their friends, and we don't. And Janet goes and trains at a lot of places with hunting dogs and agility dogs and obedience dogs. And Dwayne never gets to play with those dogs. And he's the happiest, most well-behaved dog. In agility, he just sits and looks up at her with his puppy dog eyes, just ready to go in the ring. He's so well-behaved. He doesn't blow her off and go to run to other dogs. It's the best thing you'll do for your dog. Build a solid relationship with him. You will be with that dog till the day he dies. The other dogs won't. That's my input.
Thank you, honey.
That's true.
Okay, Bob F. says, Robert, what is the best way to train your dog to stay away from rattlesnakes?
It's a rattlesnake avoidance training. I did it for years. It's very, very hard to do. It's not something you want to do yourself. I'll tell you the basic process. It's based on sight, sound, and smell. It starts with smell, then it goes to sound, then it goes to sight. The rattlesnakes are muzzled, which means their mouths are taped shut. They're closed, and they use a very, very safe surgical tape. Doesn't hurt the snakes at all, but it must be properly done because one, if you try to do it yourself, you run a big risk of getting bit, and it's very, 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 very dangerous. I've done it. I would not advocate anybody to do it. Find yourself a rattlesnake avoidance training workshop. There will be one, and make sure they're using e-collars, and make sure they're doing it at an almost obscenely high level of correction. Because I went to one with Goofy. I had trained him, and then I couldn't find rattlesnakes one season, and I took him to a trainer to do it. And they used such a mild level of correction that for the next months, if there was a rattlesnake, not that we ran across a lot of rattlesnakes, but he would go search it out because it stimulated him. It needs to crush that drive. So the dog needs to scream. I'm saying this because you guys are members. I want you to know the truth. The dog will scream when he sees that rattlesnake or smells that rattlesnake or hears that rattlesnake. It works super quick. It lasts a long time. The dogs I've trained have never, I had calls 2 years after with dogs I trained, honestly. And the people said, wow, my dog just kind of like ran away from this one area where there was a snake. Done improperly, the dog will try to fight the snake. The dog sees a conflict building because of the low level of stimulation, and it triggers it onto the snake, and the dog thinks the snake is doing that, and the dog thinks the snake can overcome that fight. The dog thinks he can overcome the fight with the snake, is what I'm trying to say. And you'll end up with a dead dog. And where I always see it is dogs that are poorly rattlesnake trained are dogs that will bark at the snake. And people say, oh, he's perfectly trained, he's barking at the snake. If a rattlesnake is cornered and your dog is barking at it, that snake will bite your dog, and you will have a very sick or a very dead dog. Rattlesnake training has to be this thing that the dog thinks he will die if he goes near it, and he will run away. And with a harder dog, it's hard to do. But yeah, definitely don't do it yourself.
Okay, Andrew says, my dog refuses to eat out of her bowl and will only eat her food out of a Kong. If this was any other dog, I would just pull their food bowl if they refuse to eat. However, she needs medication that requires her to eat. How can I train her to eat out of her bowl?
Well, I wonder what the medication is.
I wonder too. I would just put it in the Kong.
Yeah, I would put the medication in the Kong too. I would probably give her a very small amount of food in the Kong, and then put the rest of the food in the bowl. But if you have to give her medicine, like let's say a couple times a day, the other thing I do is I put it in coconut oil. That's like a really good trick to do, or put it in a hot dog or something like that. I mean, certain medicines you can't use with meat and soy, but you could do it in coconut oil. But what I would do is the dog just wouldn't eat.
I wonder if it's liquid or if it's a pill
the medicine,
or a capsule.
Yeah. I mean, if it's liquid, you could squirt it in the dog's mouth. If it's a pill, you could put it in something and give it to him. But I guess the question is, how do you get the dog to eat out of the bowl? One is I would try a different bowl. So if it's a metal bowl, I'd try a plastic bowl, a ceramic bowl. If it's ceramic bowl, I'd try a metal, or I would switch it up, try to find a different bowl. That's one thing. And two is I would just give the dog enough food to give the medicine, and then that's it. I mean, you can't let your dog hardwire things like that. Like the dog just won't, I've had people say, oh, my dog won't eat. Well, what do? Well, I just give him treats, and I do this and I do that. So you end up appeasing the dog through the thing. Like you're saying, and I get it, you're saying you have to give the dog medicine. So you say, well, I give him to him the Kong anyway. So just lessen the food until the dog's going to be really, really hungry, and then try out some different bowls first and then go from there. But I would not kowtow to the dog. My dogs will eat out of cardboard box if they have to. They love their food.
Okay, John R. says, "Hi, Robert. I have a 12-month-old Labrador Retriever
Nice.
who I have had from 7 months old. In most instances, and with your help, he has done me proud and is a blessing to own. My concern is sometimes when we are out walking, he suddenly starts jumping at me and mouthing hard enough to draw blood, and he has torn my jacket in a few places. What would you suggest I do? May I say that as a member, your videos have made our training sessions very enjoyable. Thank you for sharing your expertise. Take care, John."
Thank you, John. That means a lot to me. It always, you know how I love when I hear people are doing really well with it, enjoy the video. More than likely, when the dog is jumping, you get excited with him and you tell him, no, knock it off, and you push him down and push him down. And what that does, it engages the dog in the play. So he's trying to play with you and being mouthy. The reason he's mouthy is because that's just how dogs play. If it was a baby, he'd be grabbing you with his hands, but he's grabbing you with his mouth. And that's not comfortable, and it's not a good habit. It's a very, very sloppy habit. There's two things I always do with dogs that have that behavior. If they don't have a leash on, when they're jumping on me, I step into them, and I do it very abruptly and very firmly. And it usually knocks them down. Sometimes they land on their back. Sometimes they just fall down. But it makes the dog think twice about doing that again. The other thing you can do is you can walk your dog, and you want a leash that's a little bit longer than normal. I normally always walk with a 4-foot leash. For this kind of training, I would use a 6-foot leash. And when the dog starts jumping, I would put the belly of the leash, the excess part of the leash. So for example, if this is my leash, I would put this part here on the ground and I would step on it. And when the dog jumps up, and I've got a video coming out on that actually, with not Cora, I think it was Cora and Buster, the lady that I trained before, the German Shepherd. She had this real fearful dog, and the dog would always jump on her. And by pushing the dog down, it made the dog more fearful. And some dogs, it makes them more dominant. And I showed her this trick and I just used a long line. And when the dog came up, and you could see when they're about to jump, they kind of always give it away. I just had her step on that, and the dog would just self-correct. And the end of, 40 minutes, the dog did not jump anymore. So we've got allergies. Yeah, my nose is so itchy. Every time I do this, my mom watches the videos and says, "Why do you always put your hand on your face?" Because I've got an itch. Yeah, you want to prevent the dog from jumping. And an easy way, 6-foot leash or a long line, and just step on it and don't say anything. Like, don't say no, don't say off, don't say anything. Your interaction is more than likely festering it and making it a little bit worse. I mean, Dwayne still jumps on you a little bit, but a lot less. He does it with Janet because he's very, very affectionate with her. So doesn't really do it to me. He'll put his paws up on me, but it's less. Easiest way, put a line on the dog and just step on it so he can't do it.
Okay, Laura C. says, "I wanted to ask if e-collar could help me with this issue. Hira has a good recall, but when we walk on the fields daily off-leash and see a person near us, or maybe 10 meters, walks or runs, it doesn't matter, man or woman, she is reactive, barks, and does not respond to my recall, trance-like. To give context, she is not reactive when we walk via leash in the neighborhood, parks, or shopping. Or maybe I'm doing something wrong. I don't know." Sad face. Recall has this flow. Come, yes, treat. Thanks.
I think that's the right flow. I think if it's always come, yes, treat, come, yes, treat, come, yes, treat, then the dog will run away in hopes to get the come, yes, treat again. So I always put other obedience in. I make coming to me very exciting. I like to use toys and stuff like that because that's something that the dog always wants, and I can always call the dog back on. If you're going to use an e-collar, then you're going to need to have a tool to steer the dog back to you with. So in other words, people always think the dog's going to be running off, and you're going to push the e-collar button, and the dog's just going to come back to you. It doesn't always work like that. Sometimes it does, but for the most part, a dog that's blowing you off, let's say, when you're trying to recall them, if you're bumping them on an e-collar and saying, come, 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 they're translating that negative pressure coming from you. And then they just try to stay away from you. Or if they don't know where it's coming from, they try to run away. And I had a client that had a dog that would just run the length of the beach, and they had, it took them hours to get the dog back. The e-collar is a negative pressure to make the dog try to turn it off. And the way I do that, if the dog's going away from me, I use a long line, and it can be, you can use a 30-foot flexi lead, or you can use a 30-foot long line or whatever. And the dog is away from you, you say, come, the dog doesn't come, you say, no, pressure on the collar. When the dog starts to just turn around and come to you, say, yeah, good. And then if they don't come, then you turn the pressure back on the e-collar and turn it off when they're coming to you. Some people hold the e-collar pressure, but if you're holding pressure on the collar, the dog tends to, if they're coming towards you and they don't see a change in the stimulation, they'll try to figure something else out. They're trying to turn off the pressure. The idea of the e-collar is pressure goes off when I do the right thing. So it can help you, but you need a lot of lying support to get the dog to understand that. So in other words, the dog should understand the recall, and the e-collar should just simply reinforce it. The e-collar won't teach the recall. The e-collar will reinforce it, though. So, I mean, watch the videos and give it a try.
Okay, Anna says, I have a 9-month-old Vizsla puppy. In a couple of weeks, we'll visit a friend at her farm. So I started conditioning her to the e-collar for recall. There will be another dog at the farm, and chances are they'll play. Is it safe for dogs to play with other dogs while wearing an e-collar?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. The danger is twofold. Collars are always a danger. Collars, like chain collars or rope collars or martingale collars, because your fear is if they're playing, the other dog's jaw is going to get caught underneath, and you're going to have the dog flip around. They're going to strangulate themselves. The e-collar, as long as the dog is really conditioned to the e-collar, knowing it's coming from you, and doesn't have any reactivities towards the other dog, then yeah, the dog's going to know, okay, come, boom, you come, and you turn the e-collar off. I don't like putting e-collars on dogs that have reactivity issues, because then they might transfer that negative pressure on the other dog. But there's no danger of your dog getting, something going wrong with the e-collar playing with another dog.
Michelle says, hi, Robert. Kai, my German Shepherd dog pup, is almost 8 months now. At what age do you fade treats and start correcting? He knows his basic commands pretty well, but is starting to test me by trying to ignore the command, especially if he knows I don't have a treat. At the same time, his size and intelligence sometimes make me forget he's still a pup. I just want to make sure I'm not moving too quickly or slowly with my expectations for him.
Well, you'll see what he knows and what he doesn't know. I use treats. Janet still uses treats with Dwayne and Jimmy, and Jimmy's 11, and I still use toys and rewards with my dogs. But here's what I determine, and it's at that year window is what I'm really looking at, that 9 to 12 month window. What I look for is the dog knows the command, right? He's clear. I said sit, he knows to sit. He's done it 100 times, and then he chooses not to do it, right? If he's choosing not to do it, you must correct the dog. Right? Because you're not doing him any favors. We were talking about this with somebody, they just repeat over and over and over. They keep repeating the command, and then they try to lure it, and the dog knows the command.
But you know what? I'm sorry to interrupt you, honey, but please. 8 months old, I'm thinking maybe he knows to sit in the context of his garden.
Yeah.
And then when he's down the street in a strange environment, maybe he doesn't know it. So maybe he hasn't really been proofed yet. Maybe there needs to be more work in a variety of environments before the dog.
For sure. I do think that, but I think if the dog is doing it in the same environment and he's testing you, in other words, you're in a very neutral, for example, what Janet's saying is a good point. Like if your dog knows down, for example, at your home and in the park where you train, and then suddenly you take him to a busy street or something else, you can't expect him to know that until you've desensitized him to more stimulus. But if you're saying it's in the same environment, like he does it and then suddenly he just chooses not to do it, then a correction's in order. But a correction doesn't necessarily mean a punishment or anything harsh. It means give him a little pop on the leash. Hey, pay attention. And that's how you're going to start to dovetail that into these other environments. So your dog knows sit, for example, and he's doing it perfectly in your environment. Then you're going out to, you're down the street or you're at a park where there's other dogs around, and you say sit. Well, don't now lure it, but reinforce what you want. Say, no, hey, sit, and make the dog do it, and then reward him. But you're going to need to, the correction is going to need to come in, but it's not something, you're not going to do anything aversive to the dog. You will remind him exactly what it is. Get him to do it and reward him. But listen, I want to make a point that what Janet said is critical. You need to make sure the dog is exposed to different locations and stimulus, because if you don't and you start correcting the dog when he's in a confused state, you're going to destroy the relationship with your dog for
He's
sure.
still young.
He's young. Yeah, but as German Shepherd at 8 months should start to pay attention. They should put those pieces together. If it was a, like a Schnauzer or something like that, I'd say maybe, but I think go easy on, but here and there, a little correction won't hurt them.
Okay, Nick says, hey, Robert, my 14-month English Cocker is a very affectionate dog. His training is going great since I've become a member here. My question is, he likes to come up to me and guests and lick them, which seems like he's trying to kiss them. I don't think it's OCD, but what would you say is the best way to stop this behavior? I tried pushing the dog away, which doesn't seem to help, and I think he looks at that as playing a game.
Yeah, for sure.
Thanks so much.
Yeah, the licking thing, Goofy's a licker, and it can be annoying. It really can, especially for people who don't know your dog. It's cute for us, we love our dogs, and it's fine. The best thing you can do is teach the dog a really nice, solid place command, and when people come over, put the dog in a place command, have him say hi, put him back in the place command, and just reinforce it. Keep a little line on him. No, go to your place command. Anytime your dog gets close to those people, he's going to start nuzzling them, and Goofy does it. He'll start nuzzling people, especially when we were doing podcasts. He's like, like John Cook the other day, he was doing this, and you think he had a twitch, and it was Goofy under his arm trying to get some love. So you teach the dog a good place command, and I think that's going to be it. If you have to put him in a crate for an hour or two while people are over to teach him where to kind of give him some distance, and you're not teaching your dog to be aversive or avoidant, I should say, of people, but you're teaching your dog that there's a time and a place for your dog to come hang out with people. And when it's not that time, when you just want to hang out, the dog should just lie down. So place command is my number one suggestion for that.
That's great. That's it.
That's it? I thought we had a lot. I thought Alan said we had a lot of questions.
No, that's it.
All right. Well, thank you for your help. This was always better with Janet. Life is always better with the one you love.
Anytime, honey.
Thank you. Tomorrow, we'll be you might even be watching. They might be watching this tomorrow, which would be today. But anyway, Saturday at 10 a.m. Members Live, 9 a.m. YouTube Live. So you get me for 2 hours if you remember. How lucky are you? All right, guys. I will see you in the next show.